Today's topic, Dr. Umar, is mental health.
Yes, sir.
And how important it is, right? And how thoughts become things, right?
Yes, sir.
So the rules on my interviews goes as such. One, we can't talk negative about anybody that's not in the room. And to be honest, I don't really like to talk about people in the room. I only like to talk about us
Yes, sir.
and our own experiences. Two, we're not here to agree or disagree, but only to understand, right? And yeah, man. So let's hop straight into it. So the first thing I'm going to say, how do you define mental health?
Mental health, from an African-centered perspective, because that's the narrative that I push, is one's ability to be in harmony with the universe and everyone in it. Now, if we look at mental health as defined by the American mental health establishment, it doesn't differ too much. Mental health is defined by one's ability to function within a given set of circumstances. So when you're diagnosed with mental illness, borderline, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, personality disorder, the list goes on, it's because of your inability to function harmoniously with a given institution or set of circumstances. Now, although I don't necessarily disagree with that diagnosis, or that definition of illness, it does become a problem for us as African Americans because the system as it operates was intentionally designed for us not to be successful within it. And what happens oftentimes, so if we look at the school to prison pipeline or public school here in Philadelphia, and I'm a former Philadelphia school psychologist, by the way, okay? If the black boy isn't learning, we blame him. We don't look at the system. Now, from a Eurocentric definition, the black boy is the problem because you're supposed to function within our institutions. But from a holistic African-centered approach and from a truthful, honest approach, he's not the problem. It's the system in which he's being forced to function. So although I don't necessarily disagree with their definition, it does become problematic for us because the systems and institutions in this society were not designed, nor were they revised to guarantee that we could be successful within them. From another angle, simply put, all mentally ill people have two things in common. Number one, they don't have the ability to interpret their reality accurately. All mentally ill individuals have a problem, a fundamental crisis in being able to perceive reality. If you're an alcoholic, someone says, "Are you an alcoholic?" No, I'm not. But you're drinking 12 packs a day. But you can't perceive your reality accurately because mental illness disturbs that. So number one, it's the inability to perceive your reality accurately. And number two, okay, it is denial that you have a problem in the first place.
How do you know that your mental health is intact? And I'm talking about you. Like, how do you know where you stand with your mental health?
For me, as someone who practices traditional African spirituality, my mental health begins and ends with my relationship with supreme consciousness, i.e. God. And so for me, everything that I do, I evaluate through the lens of not only my relationship with the Creator, but the rules and regulations that have been laid out for 2 million years by African people who have developed that relationship with the Most High. So I have a set of criteria that I'm looking at that come from a spiritual realm, because from an African-centered perspective, spirituality isn't separate from anything else we do. So in America, you might have religion over here, economics over here, politics over here, business over here, and African culture, it's all one. So the priest is both the medical doctor and the psychotherapist, because for every mental health issue, there's a spiritual component to it. You are out of balance in some way with something. There can be no mental illness from an African holistic perspective unless you are out of balance with the universe.
How do you, so you know, I've watched obviously I watched all of your interviews.
Yes, sir.
And I noticed that you attach labels to yourself, you know, Black, African, like different labels or whatever. How do you feel about labels? Do you feel like labels limit the mind?
They very well can. Psycholinguistics, the study of how language limits one's ability to describe their phenomenon or describe the world. So, for example, we are prisoners to the language that we speak. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Amistad. which was not historically accurate, but there was a scene in there when the actor Djimon Hounsou, who played the role of the leader of the rebellion, Sin Q, and there was a episode there where one of the white attorneys was interviewing him inside of the prison cell, and he asked the attorney to describe a particular word, and I forget what the word was, and then Djimon Hounsou responded, Sin Q, he said, in my language, there's no such thing as maybe. Either it is or it is not. There's no gray. But in English, there's a lot of gray. You see, so there was a conversation where he could not use that word because it conflicted with the culture that he belongs to.
You know what's interesting about that is I ended up doing a lot of like research about language.
Yes.
And I ended up realizing how the English language is a language of separation.
It is.
Right? And how, for instance, we'll say, look at that wave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But there's other languages where they say, look at the ocean waving.
Exactly.
You see?
It's a collective approach.
And I'm like,
yes.
Whoa.
And every language is a result of the collective consciousness and philosophy of the culture that birthed it. You can never separate language from the philosophy and the culture that gave birth to it. We also have to keep in mind that English is not an original language. Okay, it grows out of the Germanic script. Okay, so English is not original, which is why if you go to the dictionary and you look at the origin of words, more than half of all words in the English diction are not English. You even have African words in the English language, which is interesting. Why? Because me working in the schools, there's always this big controversy over Ebonics, African tongue, and where a lot of white educators would argue that these children are speaking broken language. And I would argue they are not. They are speaking their indigenous African language, but they're using your vocabulary. See, there's more to a language than just the vocabulary. There's the philosophy, there's the syntax, there's the rhythm. And when you look at the way we speak as African Americans, even though we're using English, and we just came back from Ghana Monday, if you were in Ghana with us, you will see that they're speaking different languages. But guess what? The philosophy is the same. The emotional impact is the same. For example, as African Americans, we tend to always speak in the present sense. I'm about to go get something to eat. I'm fixing to go get my grub on. It's always here and now. African language is always about the here and now because we are always becoming. So when you hear Europeans talk, they'll say, well, we are going to get something to eat. There is a lot of respect paid to the enunciation of words. Okay? In most West African languages, from where we come from, there's not a lot of strong consonant endings on words. They're vowels. So when we talk in Africa, the words flow together as if you are rapping because we don't have to enunciate the N's and the G's and the Z's. Instead of saying we are getting ready to have supper, we just say we getting ready to get our eat on. And that's the way we all talk. I don't care if you're in South Africa, Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone. We all speak the same way. The only thing we use from this language is the vocabulary. And America has itself to blame for that. Because although Willie Lynch, whether he existed or not, is irrelevant, but in the philosophy of Willie Lynch, he talks about how it was important to take the language away from the African. But guess what? In the 13 colonies, they did not listen. It was illegal for you to get an education. It was illegal for you to be caught with a book. They would cut the fingers off your hands for trying to get a self-education. So they kept us, believe it or not, by not teaching us English, they protected our indigenous language. And here we are 400 years later, coming up on August the 21st, and we still speak in African.
I got a question for you. In this world, with the media,
yes,
the movies,
yes,
right? Because I'm in this space where, the self-growth and the self-development is serious right now, right? Mm-hmm. And you never know what to believe.
Yes.
Right? And how do we even know that any of the things that you say are true? How do we know anything is true or false in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. The thoughts that you are having are being perceived through your eyes of your experience, right? And we all perceive our reality through our own experience. Who is to ever say what is right and wrong?
What you're dealing with there, and that's an excellent question, good brother. You're dealing with a fundamental difference in the way cultures interpret reality. So let's look at us as African people. In our cultures throughout the continent and throughout the world, we believe that experience is shared by all individuals within a particular village or culture. So in most African cultures, the fundamental existence of a person is not the self. It is the village. I cannot exist separate from my village. So when I speak, I don't speak for myself. I speak for the village. But when you get into European culture, that's when you get into the philosophy of an I. But in Africa, the I is the we. There is no pure I, which is why when I think of my Rastafari brothers and sisters, the Bobo Shanti Rastas, who I'm very close with because they're Pan-Africanist as well, they often refer to you as the I. They will say the I just said this or the I just said that to reinforce the notion that we are a oneness people. And we have gotten away from that over here in America, where I would argue we become more selfish, okay, than even the mainstream American culture has as African people. So when you talk about individual experience, right, from an African context, there is no individual experience. Because me and my village, because we are so much in oneness, what I see, she see, and he see, because the oneness is more important than anything else. We always talking about one God, okay? But God is one. And when we unite as one being, okay, then that is an expression of divine power.
What are your 3 steps to get into that? To coming together as one universal consciousness?
I believe, fundamentally, and I think my cousin, the great Frederick Douglass, said it best when he said it is better to raise strong children than to repair broken men. One thing about the mind we got to be clear about. Once a seed is sown, you can't take it out. That's why we have to protect the minds of our children. They listen to one bad rap song. They watch one bad movie. One idea is put in there. Everything planted in soil must bring forth. That's a universal truth. And that's why we have to protect the minds of our children, because once the wrong seeds have been allowed to be planted in there, you can't take them out.
Okay, so hold on. Because would that imply that there's nothing we can do? Because,
No.
Okay.
No.
Because the way I feel is like this. I was growing up, people would tell me things and I would believe them, right?
Right.
Especially like our parents.
Yes.
Right? Our parents are gods. They're perfect.
Yes.
Right? And everything that they do, I want to do. And I'm watching them and I'm learning everything. And basically I take these beliefs that create my behaviors into the world, right? Thinking that they're okay. Then one day realizing that, oh, my mom and dad are not perfect. They're people, right? They've done all the things that the rappers have done. They smoke, they've done this, X, Y, and Z, and I thought they were perfect, and I am following them, and I realized, like, whoa, I got to think for myself.
Yes.
Right? I have to think for myself, because a lot of people, especially parents, think for their kids, right? They tell them how to think instead of make them, learn how to think for themselves.
Analyze alone, yeah.
So in my experience, I feel like there is a way back. I don't care how many seeds is planted. I don't care what education I got. I don't care what my parents taught me. I don't care what I seen on the television. None of that. There is a way out. We have free will. We have to build our mental faculties, right? We have to empower our will and our courage and things. So once the seed is there and we can't take it out, it can't be over. So how do we live our life knowing that we have these seeds that have been planted unconsciously when we didn't have that analytical mind and they just threw it in there? What do we do?
Great question. Let me allow for a cognitive psychology analogy.
Okay.
And by the way, I did my doctoral training right across the street, Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, class of 2012. Your computer has a virus in it.
Okay.
You run all the virus software you can, you get the virus out, right? Will that computer ever function exactly as it did before you rid itself of that virus? Can you ever be certainly sure that the virus or the effects of it will never rear its ugly head again? No, you can't. Most people will say we might got to get another computer to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because if you don't get rid of that virus and you put all that new data in there, it might mess up your programs and everything else. You can never be sure. That's how it is with the human mind. Okay. You can help remedy someone from their alcoholism, their low self-esteem, their bipolar, their borderline, their anxiety. But the chance always exists that he'll go back to the alcohol later. That's why in Alcohol Anonymous, in their program, you never drink ever again, because in their model, they teach you that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And because of that, we're going to teach you how to never go back to the bottle at all. They teach alcoholism like a disease that you don't get rid of. You can only manage it.
Okay, so hold on. So.
In other words, the best protection, the best intervention is prevention. We have to stop the problems from taking place. We have to stop our kids from being sexually abused, verbally abused, physically abused. We got to stop them from being put in special ed, diagnosed with ADHD. We got to stop the Ritalin and the Adderall, right? Because once that harm has been created, the human consciousness is so sensitive, sir. It is so sensitive that even though you can repair the problem, you can never totally restore the software.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you what I believe.
Yeah.
I believe that with the universe that I live in and my experiences with the universe, and I'm talking about oh man,
yes, sir.
Do I understand the universe is real, okay? I've had situations where I don't know how I'm going to eat. I don't know how I'm going to get the boom today. I don't know what I'm wearing. I don't know who I'm... And it just falls into place. Somebody will drive past. Hey, sir, I'm just driving past. Oh, take me to work. Oh, I'm not doing anything. Really? Yeah. Have some food in the car, too. Really? What is this, the Truman Show? Right? So...
But that's divine grace, which is different from psychological conditioning. What you're talking about is being in a state of flow where your Aishe, which is an African word for spiritual blessings and power, happens to be lining up. See, our goal in life is to become 100% in alignment with divine will. When you experience that, that's what we call flow, where at that particular time, everything in your life is functioning perfectly. You see it sometimes in the sporting world when Allen Iverson playing in the playoffs can't miss a shot. You say, where he's shooting and he's not even looking. Right. He's in flow, which means you are in alignment with divine will, which is an expression of perfection. To make that your permanent reality is why we're on the planet.
Got it. Okay. Wow, that was deep. Okay. You talked about ADHD.
Yes, sir.
Being fake.
A fraud.
Right, fraud.
A hustle.
And you
a
said,
scam.
Now, tell us exactly. Now, do me a favor. Don't tell them what drug to give their child. Okay?
Right.
Because I was blown away when I heard that. I was like, love on purpose, baby. But ADHD being a fraud, why is it a fraud?
Okay. ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder, comes to us in 1980 from the American Psychiatric Association, funded by the publicly traded Wall Street drug companies. Let's be clear. All these drugs, it's about money. These are products, commercial products that are publicly exchanged. It's money. And the American Psychiatric Association has been in debt to Wall Street for decades. They fund the mental health establishments. They control the research. That's why you never see research saying children shouldn't take Ritalin. They shouldn't take Medidate. They shouldn't take Concerta. They shouldn't take Cycler Pro, because they control the research, because they fund it. Now, is that a coincidence that we get ADD in 1980? What else happened in 1980? That's the same year that the CIA dropped off crack cocaine in the black ghettos. So that means they started drugging up the children in school and the adults at the same time. Chemical warfare, no different than what the British did to the Chinese. Okay? And black America is still under chemical warfare, as well as other forms of warfare like police genocide. But there's no drug that can make you pay attention. There's no drug that can make you learn about Christopher Columbus, Helen Keller, Anne Frank, and this other stuff, right? Drugs can only arrest the natural brain chemistry. They can calm you down. They can't make you concentrate. Remember that. Drugs can calm you down. They can't make you concentrate. So there wasn't enough prescriptions being written for ADD. So in 1987, they add an H to it. And ADD becomes Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So you know what that means? If your son has inattention problems, he's not hyper. He just don't pay attention. According to the new criteria of the DSM, he can still be diagnosed with ADHD, and he's not even hyper. He'll be taking drugs for a problem he don't even have, because it's all about the money. And not only that, parents need to also know, even if your child doesn't even meet the criteria for ADHD as laid out, they can still be diagnosed with it, because there's a category known as specified or unspecified ADHD. This means they don't even meet all the criteria, but we feel strongly that they need the crack for kids.
Now, you said don't give your kids drugs. The only drug to give your kid is
love.
Love.
If they had love, they wouldn't need drugs. 85% of black boys diagnosed with ADHD are fatherless. Daddy's in jail for doing what? Probably selling the same crack they given to a son. Isn't that ironic? That you got black men filling up the prisons on State Road right here in Philadelphia for selling or possessing crack, but yet you'll give a derivative of that crack, methylphenidate, okay, and you'll give it to a son so he can sit still long enough to learn about Christopher Columbus. Isn't that insane?
I got a question.
Yes.
Do you believe in evil?
Absolutely, I do.
What is evil? Define it for you. What do you think evil is?
Evil is the absence of one's understanding, and overstanding that the entire universe functions under righteousness and divine design. And no matter how much you try to work against that divine design, you will ultimately lose. Evil, anyone who practices evil at the end of the day doesn't understand the power of the Most High.
So evil would be the absence of love.
Yes. Yes.
So would you then say that just like the darkness, right? Darkness doesn't exist. It's not until you turn off the light that darkness comes, right?
I would argue that darkness gives birth to the light. They are not opposites. They are two parts of the same. When that woman carries that baby, when our queens carry that baby is carried in darkness. In fact, the sac of the woman is covered in melanin, the chemical that gives us our color, you see, which is more than just color. This is an energy, by the way, okay? When she gives birth to that baby, she opens her legs, and then the light shines out, and the life comes. So it's not light versus dark. It is the darkness that births the light.
Are y'all seeing this? Are y'all seeing this? Wow, amazing. Is money the root of all evil?
As the Bible says, it's the love of money that is the root of all evil. I'm going to go a step further. From a political perspective, it is not having enough money that is the root of all evil. When you look at poverty, okay?
Yes.
I grew up North Philadelphia, okay? Yes. Susquehanna Avenue, right? Not having money is the root of evil because when people don't have, they get desperate. You understand? They start making sacrifices. They start taking risks. They go into survival mode. That's the evil.
So I have a question for you. Because I am trying to get all the wisdom I can.
Yes, sir.
My understanding, and again, I'm sure you're going to correct me if I'm wrong in any area, but we're not here to agree or disagree.
Yes, sir.
Understand, right? There are 3 brain waves. And as all waves, just like the radio waves, they carry information.
Yes.
Okay. These brain waves carry thoughts, certain types of thoughts. The highest brain wave is godlike thoughts.
Yes.
Okay. And the lowest brain wave is the unconscious mind. It is survival mode. And
Total selfishness.
Right. And from my understanding, it is our environment that we're placed in that is causing us to go into survival mode and not be able to move up in brainwaves.
Absolutely.
This is why we meditate, right? To move our brainwaves up. Now, I seen you. I don't know if you were meditating before we started.
Yes, I was.
Praying. Okay.
Clearing out the mind and asking my Ori to make sure that my responses to your questions are in divine alignment. So in the spiritual system that I practice is known as Ifa. It's from the Yoruba of Nigeria. We all know that we have God in us. We have that soul. Well, in Yoruba culture, it's called the Ori, and your head is the shrine for the God that lives in you, the Ori, that aspect of supreme consciousness that dwells within us. And so we propitiate the Ori, and we ask the Ori, that aspect of the one God, to help us stay in alignment intellectually, because the Ori is responsible for the decisions we make, the thoughts that we think, okay? And the Ori also communicates with all other spirits on our behalf. So if your Ori is not in alignment with the Most High, then nor can your communications be with any other spiritual source. So I was asking my Ori to align me for the purpose of this interview, to make sure.
How do you strengthen your will, your free will? And define free will.
Okay. It's interesting you say that, because my archetype is Ogun. Ogun is the aspect of God that deals with strength, discipline, tenacity, hard work. He is the willpower, right?
Okay.
This is the personification of an aspect of divine consciousness.
Okay.
In other words, in our humility as African people, we understand we can never totally comprehend God, so we approach God through understanding the different functions of supreme consciousness. So just like you have sir, the brother, the son, the cousin, the philosopher, the disc jockey, these are all different functions of you, but there's still only one sir.
Right.
So when I speak of Ogun, I'm speaking about that aspect of God that deals with will. I'm born under that archetype. We're all born under one. Willpower is important, right? But it should only be exercised once you are certain that your agenda is in alignment with divine will. So the word Ifa means destiny. We are all born with a destiny. We actually choose it before we incarnate to earth. So all of us have been here before. You're coming back to finish your job. You didn't finish. Otherwise, you wouldn't be back. So we've incarnated to finish that agenda that was originally assigned to us. We have to make sure you're always walking your divine destiny. You can't walk mine, I can't walk yours. It must be yours. And I would argue that from a mental illness perspective that we started discussing, a lot of us are unhappy because the walk we're walking ain't the one we chose. That's not the agreement we made with God. You didn't agree with God to come here and be a doctor. You agreed with God to come here and be a savior. You didn't agree with God to come here and be a rapper. You agreed with God to come here and be a medical doctor. You see, so a lot of times when people say, I still feel unfulfilled, I'm still not happy, I got all the money, I got a wife, I got a beautiful family, why am I not happy with myself? Because you're not walking the destiny you chose in heaven before you got here. So being in alignment with divine will is key, because guess what? No will is greater than the divine. So even if you are totally committed to building the greatest entertainment company in the world, if that is not the contract you signed with the Lord before you came to this earth plane again, it will fail. And even if it succeeds, you'll never be happy because that's not why you're here. You must walk your path and you must find out what your destiny is. Knowing your destiny is critical. And that's why in our tradition, we give spiritual readings from time to time to help us know if we're on the right path or not.
How do you describe your existence? Meaning, like what are you?
We exist on two levels. We exist in heaven and we exist on earth. Every one of us.
What is heaven and what is earth? Because
heaven is a realm of existence where all spirits who have walked this earth and have conducted themselves a certain way are. Now, there's other realms for those who did not conduct themselves a certain way. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, it's called hell. Okay, African traditions, we may give it other names. Okay, but there's a place where spirits go. And again, we are all reincarnated beings. So when you reincarnate, your soul remains in heaven, but sends an aspect of it with you down to earth. So I have a double up there. You have a double up there. And in African tradition, we're often asked to communicate with that double. There's offerings that we give to that double. It's almost like, you're going to astral project yourself onto the earth plane. You understand? And we establish a communication with that aspect of ourself that is in heaven so they can help align us to our perfect destiny.
Is it written or are you writing it?
It's both. In African culture, we say we're not creators, we're co-creators. When you talk about fate versus destiny, it's a balance. Your destiny is written before you got here. However, you can change it by your conduct and decisions. I could have been destined to be the greatest black leader in world history. But because of poor decisions, poor character, mistakes that I made, I can cut that short. Which is why in our culture, making decisions is critical. Because every decision creates a set of circumstances that dictate that more decisions need to be made. So again, it's about staying on that path. For example, somebody calls you tonight. There's a party going on. You're like, I don't know if I want to go. They be kind of shady over there. You decide to go. You lose your life. Your destiny was to do something great on earth. But you made the decision to go to a party where you lost your life, where you could have easily decided not to go. So does everyone die when they're supposed to? Not necessarily. In fact, when people die prematurely, there's certain rituals that we do because your soul was not supposed to go back yet. You were supposed to be here a little longer, but because of poor decisions, you lost your life earlier. We co-create with the Creator.
I believe that the world is not happening to you, that it's responding to you.
Okay.
I believe that what we put out is what we get back. I believe that love conquers all, right? And thoughts become things, right? So for me, thoughts become feelings and feelings become actions, right? So if you think your spouse is cheating on you, then you'll feel like, for instance, like you'll get hot inside and then you'll pick up the phone. That's an action, right? So thoughts become feelings, feelings become actions, actions can become behaviors, behaviors become habits, habits become your personality.
And that becomes your destiny.
And that becomes your personal reality. That's how you interact with your personal reality, right? For me, I understand that you can add an emotion to a thought to bring it to manifestation, right? So at the end of the day, I don't know what to believe, right? I heard about all the religions, right? I grew up Christian and I grew up Catholic. My mom was Catholic, hardcore.
Yes, sir.
Right? Get the rosary, do your Hail Mary.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
And my dad was Muslim and my mom was Christian.
Great. So look, I go home. No. This is how we do it, right? So I'm like, wow. At a young age, I realized that I had a choice in religion, right? I said, oh, wow. I never knew that you could choose religion. Then I realized that we are free to choose, but not free from choice, right? So that means that we have to make the best decisions we can make.
Yes.
How do you make a good decision? How do you know? Because at the end of the day, you do have to choose something. You have all the choices in the world, and everything exists at the same time, right? So how do you know when you're making a good decision?
It's tough, but I would say some aspects of making a good decision, number one, include knowing all your options, not being emotional with it. A lot of times our emotional commitment to a certain path is what keeps us from making a chosen decision. For example, you're about to get married. You find out she ain't the right one for whatever reason, but you done spent all this money on the wedding. You didn't already pay for the honeymoon. You got all the top names of the industry coming to this wedding. You know that she's no longer the one for you. You know it in your gut. But guess what? You're going to go ahead and get married anyway because of how other people perceive you. Your emotional commitment to the situation you created around her becoming your wife forces you to go forward. I know a lot of people who've done this. I've had people call me up the day before their wedding. Dr.Umar, I need to get your advice on something. I'm about to marry this sister. I'm about to marry this man. I just found out, boom, 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 boom. He's a porn star. She's a this. I mean, these are real stories I've had. If he's doing it now, he's going to do it after you get married. Marriage is not a cure for promiscuity. And if you're getting married to cure promiscuity, you're going to be very disappointed. End it now. You already know in your heart that you don't need to go forward, but you're more concerned about how people look at you than you're concerned about your happiness and peace of mind. And too often our decisions are mired by our ego. Because see, the problem we got a soul and then we got an ego. The soul is of heaven. The ego is of earth. The soul is about doing what is best. The ego is about doing what looks the best. And the question becomes, what is running your life? Is it your ego or is it your soul? And that's the good and bad, the devil and the God that is at war with us constantly. Okay, because sometimes you say, I know I don't need to check this brother. What he said to me was disrespectful, but I need to let it go. I need to be humble. And when you humble yourself, you basically tell the ego to go have a timeout. You see? But your ego says, nah, he disrespected you. You got to check him. So you end up checking him and you end up getting shot and you end up being in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. We got to decide what's going to run our life. The soul, which is God, or the devil, which is the ego. Two masters cannot run the same household.
You said if you control a person's thinking, you control their actions.
Yes, and that comes from Dr. Carter G. Woodson, father of Black History Month, Miseducation of the Negro. If you control their thinking, you control their actions. And if you control his thinking, you don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He'll go on his own. And if there's no back door for him to go to, he'll make one. That's how powerful it is to control what people think, which is why for me, what's happening to our sons in the school district of Philadelphia and all across this country, to me, it is a crime against humanity because they are deliberately destroying the intellectual potential of Black children. Dr. Carter G. Woodson said there would be no lynchings if they did not begin in the schoolhouse. Mine is the master power, which is why I say if a brother is ever arrested for committing a crime, his classroom teacher and his school principal should also be held accountable. They should be accomplices right there in front of the judge because had you done your job, he may not be here. The mother of crime is miseducation. And the father of crime is economic castration. You miseducate a Black boy and then you prevent him from earning a decent livable wage job. You just made a criminal. Criminals are not born. Criminals are made by the society where they exist.
How do you control your thinking?
To control thinking takes meditation, intense prayer, intense spiritual philosophical thought. It takes fasting, and it takes wisdom. And you got to pray for the wisdom, because you can have all the knowledge and none of the wisdom. Wisdom must gracefully come from the Most High. You have to pray for that. Because once you have wisdom, you know exactly what to do and when to do it. Once you have wisdom, you know the exact decision to make and when to make it. Wisdom is when the consciousness of the Supreme descends on your own mind and guides your thought and behavior. You have to be at peace once wisdom comes upon you. Some of us get it in our 60s. Some of us get it in our 70s, our 80s. But we have to get to the point where we can get wisdom in our youth, because that's when we need it. Because it is the youth that lead, and it is the youth that build. Imagine if you and I had the divine consciousness of knowing the right thing to do at every moment of our existence. We will be unstoppable. As the Bible says, and know that ye are gods. All of us are a manifestation of supreme consciousness on the earthly realm. And we have to start projecting that and understanding that. And that's one of the things that I want to teach at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. I want them to understand that you are God walking the earth in flesh, not to be arrogant. Because sometimes we'll get arrogant with it. I'm God. No. You didn't create that sun. You didn't create that moon. You didn't create that water. When I say you are gods, I'm saying you are a living manifestation of the one supreme essence from which we all come. I want to teach that.
What's the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Knowledge is purely information. Wisdom is the ability to put that information into action so that it serves the greater good of humanity.
Got it.
There is no wisdom that does not begin and end with the best interests of the people. Whenever you get greed, wisdom's out the door.
Let me ask you a question. Being able to have, do, or be anything in the world that you want to be without displacing someone else or oppressing someone, I guess, in a sense, would that be knowledge or would that be wisdom?
I think that it sounds like it's basically an opportunity. Okay? It's an opportunity for you. Whether it will be grace or wisdom depends on what you do with it. What decisions do you make? You understand? What did you choose to do with that freedom and power that you were given? I would have to see the outcome to determine if it was grace and wisdom. And grace and wisdom are like brother and sisters. You really can't have one without the other. Because if you're wise, you have grace. And if you're grace, you have wisdom.
Do you think you're misunderstood?
All the time, and absolutely. And a lot of it is due to the fact that it's the sound bites. You know, you do an interview and they'll take a sound bite and not put it in context of what I said. And so that gets misrepresented. And of course, we live in a world where sensationalism is more important than the truth. So people often take what I say out of context. Just to give you an example, okay, I believe that African people need to marry within our culture. I do not support interracial relationships. Do I hate white people? I do not. Do I hate black people who date and marry white people? I do not. But the reason I am of that opinion is because only 1 out of every 4 black women gets married. And if all of our educated black men keep on going outside of the community, then our sisters won't have husbands. My conclusion has nothing to do with hating white people. It's about loving black women. If our boys don't see black men loving on black women, they won't do it themselves. So we're committing a self-inflicted form of sociological genocide by not showing young black boys that black women are worthy of our love.
Okay. I noticed that whenever you speak, there's separation between you and maybe someone's lifestyle or someone's skin color. And that doesn't mean hate.
Right.
It's just that
it doesn't mean hate. Right.
Do you feel like you have love in your messages?
I do. But I think only people with wisdom can understand it. I once had an elder come up to me, and the elder said, people hear you, and they think that they're hearing anger. It's actually passion. People hear you, and they think that they're hearing hate. It's actually love. See, the one thing about me, and I don't wear this on my sleeve, I help white people as well. There are white people who call me for their children, Chinese people who call me for their children. They'll never broadcast that, you understand? But I will help anyone as long as I don't take away from my own.
Okay,
You understand?
So here's the thing. I believe in love. Love on purpose. I love everyone. I love the white people. I love the black people. I love the gays. I love the streets. I love the trans. Everybody. I have nothing to say bad about anyone. But I cannot separate myself from someone.
Okay.
Meaning, instead of me saying anything about white people, I could just say, hey, we need to love more. We need to love our women more. Anyone, we just need to love.
Right. But from a political perspective, love is not a solution. In other words, if you say, I'm going to love the people who created AIDS, or I'm going to love the people that's perpetuating the mass incarceration in the mass incarceration industry, the school to prison pipeline. I'm going to love those who are in Africa dropping off diseases. Then your love does not become a solution because it does not stop the onslaught of the genocide. So at some point, you can continue the love. You never have to stop loving anyone, but you also have to recognize that truth and falsehood cannot occupy the same space and time. Love and hate cannot occupy the same space and time. So at some point, if I truly love everyone, that means I must be opposed to evil. And if you truly love everyone, which means you must be opposed to evil, you have to take political stances on certain issues, because those things that are taking place are not creating the circumstances that allow for the love you want so badly to flourish for everyone. It must be freedom, justice, and equality for everyone or for no one. We must all have those opportunities, or no one must have those opportunities. One of the biggest problems we have in the American social order for black folks is when we walked off that plantation with the passage of the 13th Amendment in December of 1865, there was no redistribution of the wealth for black people. In other words, we made America rich and got none of it. So now when you look at us, you say, why does North Philly look the way it looks? Why does Southwest Philly look the way it looks? Why are white people coming into the inner cities of Philadelphia and gentrifying the neighborhood? You know how they're able to take back North Philly so quickly, or Southwest Philadelphia so quickly? Because they can walk into the banks of Philadelphia and they can get a line of credit that allows them to come into the ghetto and buy up 10 houses, fix them up, turn them into $1 million properties and sell them back out. A poor white man could almost become a millionaire in 6 months after he fix up those 10 houses. I can't do that, and you're not likely to do that, because the bank that gave him the line of credit ain't going to give it to us. So we have to fight against economic injustice. We have to fight against political injustice. I don't have to hate the person perpetuating the injustice, but I must hate the injustice. It's the energy that must die, not the person.
Now, have you studied quantum physics?
To an extent.
Okay.
I'm psychology more than science.
Okay, got you. And can you tell me the difference between the two?
Well,
like for everybody that's watching, like, you know.
Psychology as a science deals with the phenomenon of human thought, action, and behavior. Can that be studied from the perspective of quantum physics? Yes, it most certainly can. Neurobiologists and neuropsychologists often deal at the level of quantum physics. But for me, with my entrenchment in the political reality, I deal with the observable behavior, the ways and the means and the agendas that are established that affect people's lives for good or for bad. But that is not out of harmony with what I do. In other words, they can coexist.
Do you think that your thinking may be the thoughts of a victim state? Like, you know how sometimes people are in victim state?
Yes, victim mode, victim consciousness.
Yes. Do you feel like in order for you to believe some of the things that you believe, that you have to play the victim as well?
Not at all, because as a revolutionary Pan-African nationalist, which is my political philosophy, I don't engage victimhood. I can tell you right now that white America will never help black America get on an equal footing. Never. Because equality is a sin under racism. In the very same breath, I'm going to tell you that we as a people have the ability to solve all our problems, whether the United States government gave us a hand or not. In other words, I can give you the reality of racism in America, and in the very next breath say, I know we can overcome it because it's been done before. We have ancestors who have overcame it before. We have examples of people who had to challenge the status quo and won it. So I don't believe in victim consciousness. Not for one moment. Let's take miseducation. I know for a fact they're never going to fix the school district of Philadelphia. But guess what? Do they need to? Black Philadelphia spends $3 billion on Christmas gifts. With that type of money, we can build an independent school for every child in Philadelphia. I don't need the mayor and I don't need the superintendent. I need for black people to redirect their spending habits. If we really believe in God, why are we so comfortable having our children live in hell?
You know what's crazy is that you talk about spinning habits. Let's talk about habits real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a bad habit that you had, that you discovered, and that you had to deprogram yourself, right?
Overeating.
Okay, overeating. How did you discover it, and how did you work out of that habit? Because, you know, obviously your body is the unconscious mind, and you've been doing it for years and years and years and years. So now, when your mind is telling your body no, you're in this war. How do you overcome that?
Okay, well, I care for my mother now, okay, full time, and I love my mother to death. I'm her oldest son, second child, and I knew that I had to start eating healthier so that I can be around as long as my destiny has predetermined I should be, to make sure my mother can be around as long as her destiny has predetermined that she be. So it was my love for my mother that said, listen, your mom needs you, so you're going to have to take care of yourself so you can be there for her. So as a result of that, I started changing my eating habits a little bit, because I don't ever want my health to be a reason why my mother doesn't live the best possible life she can.
So, to make sure I understand, you have to, if you want to change a bad habit after you discover it, which is hard, by the way, right? Because you don't want to admit that something's wrong with you, or that you have, you know, a bad anything in life. After you discover it, you mean that you have to now visualize something bigger in order to get out of the bad habit.
Yes. And you have to make sure you don't allow your mind to convince you that overcoming that habit is going to take more energy, strength, and time than necessary. I do seminars for drug-addicted populations, okay, chemically dependent. And you know what I tell them? And I would probably argue my success rate is probably greater than Alcoholics Anonymous and everyone else. I say 3 things y'all need to understand. And you'll stop the crack, the heroin, the methamphetamines, the opioids, the cigarettes, the alcohol, the whole nine. Number 1, okay, you must attach strong emotion to your desire to overcome this addiction. If you don't, you will never kick it. Do you want to know why? Because when you get high, do you know how good that makes you feel? When you're under the influence of the alcohol, do you know how good you feel? Only for a moment, because you come down crashing, but there's a very strong positive emotion attached to your addiction. That's why you use the substance, because it makes you feel better. If you don't attach a stronger emotion to eliminating that addiction, you'll never end it. That's number 1. Number 2, it don't take you 5 times to stop smoking. It don't take you 10 times to leave a bad relationship. It don't take you 20 times to stop overeating. It don't take you 6 times to stop using crack. Those other 5 times, the previous failures, you never made up your mind that you wanted to stop. The reason you stopped on the 6th attempt, because for the first time you made up your mind and committed. Your commitment didn't come until the 6th time. Those previous 5 times you were playing games with yourself. The reason you quit on the 6th attempt, there's nothing miraculous about the number 6, is because that's the time you made up your mind that it was done with. We play games with ourselves, and we like to convince ourselves that I don't want to do this no more. Yes, you do. Because if you did, you can stop right now. It only take a second to stop any addiction you got once you make up your mind to do so. And the third thing is you have to bring your willpower to war. Because without the willpower, you cannot win. And by will, I'm speaking of that deep, intense spiritual strength that is absolutely necessary to conquer any evil in your life. You master those 3 things, you can kick any addiction away in a day.
Okay. I love it. How do you measure success?
Success for me, which I wouldn't be able to answer until I'm about to go back to my Lord and my ancestors, and that is, to what extent did Jermaine Shoemake make the world a better place than the one he was born into? So right now I'm trying to build a school. I'm also trying to build a community in Africa. There's a lot of things I want to do. Success for me is how much do you impact other people's well-being? It's not how many degrees I got. It's not how often you speak and this and that. By those standards, I'm already a success. That's not me. I wasn't born here to do that. I was not born here to just be some famous guy. I was born here to make other people's lives better. That's how I judge it. It got nothing to do with money, and it got nothing to do with education or none of that. How many people will have a better life because I lived? That's how I judge success.
Okay. So, you said a lot of interesting things, man. And
I appreciate you for this interview, because this is the first time ever. You got to remember now.
Okay.
I'm the most requested black scholar in this country. There's no scholar that's asked to speak around the world as much as I am in this country. And you're the first person. And I've done interviews on 6 continents. The only continent I ain't been to is Australia. You're the first person to really do a serious spiritual interview. I've never been able to really articulate this side of my philosophy. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, man.
And I didn't think we would get that on Boom 103.9. I thought you was going to ask me about that, that rumor, and that room. I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate
treat people
you
the way that I want to be treated.
Yes, sir.
I
appreciate
that. You know, I'm a mirror. You know?
Yes, sir.
And you are.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that you have to be careful with what you say because you hear yourself the loudest.
Yes.
Right. And you know, for me, man, you know where I got in my life. One day, you know, I woke up. Oh, actually. What does woke mean? What does woke mean? Dr. Umar,
Woo!
What does woke mean?
The reason I'm shaking my head is because as probably the leader, one of the leaders of the Black consciousness movement, most people would say the main one, who's serious in the way, I have an issue with the concept of wokeness because people are content with being woke. Let me give you an example. You come to me for therapy. Okay. You're addicted to cigarettes. Okay. You're self-referred. Nobody told you were addicted. You know yourself, I'm smoking too much. This is going to kill me. Let me go get some therapy. You come to me. I know I'm a cigarette addict. I need you to help me get through this, man, because I don't want to destroy my life. You're woke. You are woke to the reality that you have an addiction. But guess what? That's only the first step, the rehabilitation. The problem with Black consciousness and the wokeism movement, they're content just to be aware that they understand racism. They're content just to be aware that they understand African history and culture. It's not enough. We can't stop because we're woke. What good is knowing the house is on fire if you ain't going to put the fire out? And that's the problem with the Black conscious movement. Everybody's woke. Everybody's well-learned. Everybody has the information. Ain't nobody applying it. Can you name me a Black community in this country where you can find a Black-owned supermarket, a Black-owned bank, a Black-owned school, okay, and a Black-owned hospital in the same neighborhood? You can't name one. Mind you, we are a $2 trillion people. We're the richest group of Africans on the planet and the 10th richest nation in the world. And we don't have an independent Black community, but everybody's woke. I could care less about wokeness until I see independent African nation building, until I see progress, until I see us employing our own, until I see us providing jobs for our brothers and sisters who are coming out of the penitentiary. I don't care about woke. I care about success and progress, and we're not making none. The biggest difference between the Black conscious movement of today and the one of the 1960s is what? Dr. King didn't know everything we know today. Malcolm X didn't know everything we know today. Huey didn't know everything we know today. Medgar Evers didn't know everything. Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, they didn't know everything we knew today, but they did more than us. Look at what Dr. King did. Look at what Fannie Lou Hamer did. Ida B. Wells, Medgar Evers, Malcolm, look what they did. They had some knowledge, but they didn't have this knowledge, but they did more with less because they had wisdom. We have knowledge. Until we get the wisdom, the knowledge won't mean anything.
In you being misunderstood, right? Because I believe that. So when things happen to me, anything, I don't care what it is. If I get in a fight, if I get in an argument, if a bill's late, anything in the world that happens to me, I take on my own responsibility, right? I think it's very important that when something happens, you're not like, well, it's your fault. Yes. You did this, blase, blase. For me, if I get into an argument with my lady, I say, well, what did I do, right? What did I say? What type of emotion? How did it land there, even though I didn't intend it to land there?
Yes.
So in you being misunderstood, what part of that are you responsible for?
I'm responsible for the fact that as a Leo, as an Ogun archetype, that is my energy, as someone born on the anniversary of the Nat Turner War, the Haitian Revolution, the George Jackson War, I believe I am the sword. My job is not to come through and play the social worker. I am the vanguard. My job is to come through with the proverbial sword, right? Cutting off the head of evil, cutting off the head of untruth. So my job is to be the battering ram. I'm the first line. I'm the one you send in to knock the door down. And I mean that metaphorically.
Right.
The door of injustice, the door of lies, of deceit, of lack of knowledge. That is my job. I am an Ogun. I am not the diplomat. That is a Shango. Shango is a warrior too, but Shango is a diplomat warrior. Ogun don't do conversation. Ogun comes through with the machete. He asks the questions later. And that's a spiritual concept of destroying the lack of knowledge and bringing forth the truth by any means necessary. That's what I'm born to do. You understand? To tear it down, ask the questions later. That's my job. So I embrace the consequences of that, which is some people are going to misunderstand me. But when I look at it overall, I think that those who are sincerely interested in knowing what I stand for will learn it, because my evidence of my work speaks for itself. There's no black psychologist that has ever impacted black parents the way that I did in American history. None. No one has ever overturned and upset the ADHD system and the special ed system like I did. None.
So I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
The truth hurts.
Oh, the truth does hurt. And I want it to hurt, because only if you are in pain will you search for a remedy to that pain. If you come to my lecture, I want to piss you off. People will come to me after the lecture and say, well, you know, them two walked out, or they were very upset with what you said about this or that. Good. I didn't bring you here to turn you into a Umar robot. I brought you here to make you think. And even if you don't come out agreeing with me, as long as you are thinking for yourself not letting the newspaper, the magazine, or social network do it for you, I've succeeded. My job is to create an independent thinker, not a follower.
Okay. So on that, I like to say this. Do you think, obviously, I'm on radio, so I have to watch what I say all the time.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'll be on radio too, so I got
and I know you came in here.
I got to watch what I say,
you got your pad, you got your pen.
Yeah, you got to
make sure.
Because I understand that that the airways will only tolerate a certain degree of revolutionary information.
Okay.
So if I come on here, if I'm on a Breakfast Club, if I'm on Tom Joyner, I know that if I go too hard, it won't get played, which means people won't benefit from what I had. You understand? So when I'm sitting up there with you, various personalities, I might want to give this answer, but if you give that answer, nobody will ever hear it. So I basically have 4 levels. I have a level that I operate on. If I'm in the hood in North Philly and it ain't nothing but the brothers out of jail, I'm going in like you've never seen. But then when they invite me to go speak at the universities, I got to come a different way. Suit, tie, more academic.
Now,
if I go into the black church, that's another way. I'm not going to say anything about white Jesus, because some people going to think I'm attacking the religion. No, but stay with me. Well, I got a problem with white Jesus. But the reason why I may not discuss white Jesus in a black church is I don't want them to confuse my criticism of the imagery with the religious system, because I have no problem with Christianity. I got a problem with the images y'all using within your system. You see, and then I have the 4th level, which is like being on radio, where I have to be extremely shrewd and strategic about what I say, because I understand people have the power to shut down the message. And it is the message that they fear the most, because they can't control how many people hear it or what they're going to do with it after they hear it. Waking up minds is a big concern. I don't know if you saw the article that came out of Newsweek 2 days ago. Newsweek just leaked some classified information that the United States government, particularly the Homeland Security, FBI, CIA, and National Security Agency, consider the so-called black identity extremists to be a greater threat to American internal security than Al-Qaeda or any of the terrorist cells. Do you know what that means? That means the United States government considers Dr.Umar to be a greater threat to the internal security of this country than any of the foreign so-called terrorist cells that the CIA created. You understand? So I got to be careful of my walk, because I understand I am a threat. 100 years ago, it was the Honorable Marcus Garvey, whose teachings I follow. 100 years later, it's me. So I got to be careful. The difference is, back then, maybe not Garvey's time, that's the 20s, but Dr. King's time, the 60s, Dr. King could operate a little bit because he had Malcolm to take some of that energy. Malcolm could operate a little bit because he had Medgar Evers to take some of that energy. Medgar Evers could operate a little bit because we had SNCC and CORE and all these different black organizations, Stokely Carmichael. But guess what? There's only a few serious black brothers in the conscious movement. I mean serious. A lot of them just want to sit on YouTube, make videos, make some YouTube dollars, get popular, that's it. They not about this. I'll die for this. You understand? This is my life. I've been into this since I was a 4th grader at Meade Elementary School, 18th and Oxford. I don't know nothing but black consciousness. I didn't come to this as a byproduct of being locked up. I didn't come to this as a byproduct of being kicked off my job by white folks. I've been the same person since I was in 3rd grade when I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. So this is very real for me. So when people play with my life's work, it bothers me because it's not a joke.
One, you said that you know, that when you talk and they feel that pain, that, you know, you're happy because, hey, you know, it's time for you to discover why you feel that pain,
Yes.
right? And for me, so from my understanding, people can only learn through pain or through inspiration.
Okay.
Okay? And I think that inspiring lives. No, I think that empowering people to think on their own and to learn through inspiration would be the best way, in my opinion.
I totally agree with you. And I think that the number one most often used word to describe my message when people come up to me is that I'm very inspiring. You understand? Of course, you do have those few who take issue with what I said, but people say, you inspired me. I get emails on a daily basis through the grace of God, some of which is hard for me to believe. I've had people email me and say, you're the reason me and my wife didn't get divorced. We heard this one thing you